Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I got my 1969 Bronco behind me up on jacks, and I got my messy clothes on. Stay tuned, it's gonna be good. Alright, so today I'm working on the 14-piece front bushing kit for my 1969 Bronco behind me. It's a beaut. They're originals. They're a mess. The rubber is all deteriorated. So I got the 14-piece kit from Northeast Classic Ford. I'm on the East Coast, so I tend to get stuff from them. I get cheaper shipping rates, although I do go to the other vendors also. So I got the Bronco up on blocks. I'm following a couple different directions. I got the directions from the tech article on classicbroncos.com. If you guys aren't a member on there, I definitely suggest joining up and checking them out if you have a classic Bronco like the one here behind me. I'm also going off two videos, a great one by John Melvin on Nashville Early Bronco, and another one on Condor Diving. He's got a classic he's been restoring, and he's got some different twists on the original directions from Classic Bronco that makes things a little bit easier, and that's the route I'm going to go. So I apologize. I didn't think I was going to get as far as I was going to get yesterday. I just wanted to put it up on blocks, get the jack stands underneath the frame, and get set for today. But I got rolling, I got tearing apart, and I didn't tape any of that. So I'm going to take you through what I've done so far and show you a close-up of what it looks like. All right, so here we are underneath. When you do this, you have to support it from the frame. So first step you got to do is jack the Bronco up. I use two jacks, one on the pumpkin and one over here to the passenger side in order to jack it up level. Otherwise, if you go from the pumpkin, you go off center and you have to go one step at a time and raise it and go to the other side and raise it. So I used two jacks. It was a lot faster and easier, I thought. Once you get it up high enough, you want to have it on some sort of blocks, either build a platform with 2x12s or 2x10s. I had these huge chunks of oak, so I used that as my blocking. Got it up high enough, sat the jack stands on the frame. Next thing you want to do is PV blast the crap out of everything under here. Don't use WD-40 unless it's a penetrating type WD-40, not just a regular WD-40. Can't beat PV blaster. Spray down everything about 3 days before, and then the next day I sprayed it again, and then I sprayed one more time. So I sprayed it 3 different times, so all my bolts and nuts that I had to get off were all well treated. So once you get it jacked up and supported, you want to get your wheels off. And here's where I deviated from the directions. Instead of taking the drag link off and the tie rods off, I just disconnected the pitman arm, which you can see right here, from the steering box. Just need a pitman arm puller. That came right off. I then zip tied that to the tie rods, and I'm gonna go with that. The directions they say to take the drag link off and the tie rods off in order to give you room to get your C-bushing, which are right there, your C-bushing cups off, your radius arm cups. But like I said, there's a video out there by Condor Diving, and he takes it off without doing that, and that's the route I'm gonna go because less is better. I'm not a mechanic, I'm just following directions and stuff I've seen on YouTube, so the easier the better. The next step is to take the track bar off, which bolts to this stud right here on your axle, and it goes up to your frame up there, right about there. That came off fairly easy. Like I said, my bushings were just totally deteriorated. So the track bar came off with the bushing. However, the metal bushing that's inside was stuck to that stud right here. So I just soaked that with PV Blaster, gave it about 15 minutes, took a pair of channel locks and just gently twisted it, and it came right off. So now that's cleared off and ready to go. Then you want to disconnect your drive shaft. You can see it hanging back there with the blue masking tape on it. So you disconnect that from your front diff. I just wrapped some masking tape around the cups of the universal joint there. They're pretty solid, but I didn't want to bump it, and next thing you know, the caps fall off and the needle bearings go everywhere. So that's just taped up. And right now it's resting on the exhaust cross member. I may just wire tie that up just so it's definitely secure. Next thing I'm gonna do is take the shocks off, and then we'll get working on the springs. All right, so we got the shocks unbolted from the radius arms. Right here, I used a small jack just to put a little pressure on that radius arm and get the bolts out. Because as soon as you drop those, the axle drops a little bit. Well, both sides are off. In that direction, say to disconnect the brake line. These brake lines are fairly new. The previous owner did them, and there's quite a bit of slack, so I'm gonna try to get away with not disconnecting the brake lines and see how that works out. So my next step is gonna be get these bottom bolts off the spring retainer cups in the axle. All right, so again, don't follow me. I'm not a mechanic. If you mess up your Bronco, it's not my fault. So here's how I'm gonna do it. I got a small jack again under the axle where the radius arms bolt in, the C-cups. And I'm taking these two bottom bolts out of the spring cup in the bottom. So my plan is just to drop the bottom. I'm gonna leave the top connected. Later when I'm ready, I'll jack the axle back up into position and put these two bolts back in. So we're gonna see if it works. So that worked, jack under both sides, kept the axle from dropping, just took the two bolts out of the retainer cup at the bottom here. Next we're gonna unbolt the bolts in the back of the radius arms. That's the only thing holding the axle in now. Unbolt those, we'll drop the axle down, should be good to go and start working on the bushings. All right, so this is the last step. We gotta take the pins out of here, take these bolts off. These are the mounting for the radius arms. Unbolt those, and then we should be able to just lower the axle from the front, and these will come right out of the mounts on the frame. All right, so we are completely disassembled. It was a bit of a pain to get these radius arms out. The bolts were welded on there pretty good with rust. I had to PB blast them again, let it soak for another 15 or 20 minutes. The rubber was adhered to the metal. That was a pain to get apart. Ended up having to take the springs out, only so they were out of the way. They kept interfering with the axle. What we ended up doing was taking the front cups off the front of the axle. I had a buddy stop by, and we then separated the axle from the radius arm and left the radius arm hanging from the bracket in the back, and then we were able to twist it loose and pull them out. So it's all separated. I'm gonna clean everything up, get the old bushings out, clean up the rust, and get the new ones ready to go, and we'll start reassembling. All right, so I'm working on getting the old bushings out. This is the track bar here. This end, which was on the axle, that bushing was seized right to the stud, so that wasn't a problem. The frame side still had the bushing and the rubber bushing still in it. So I tried to rig up a press here. I put a larger socket on one side so the inner metal bushing could go through it, and then pressed on the other side with one that was the same size as the bushing in the vise. It pressed it out pretty well, but not all the way. So what I did was I took a drill and just drilled a bunch of holes through the rubber, and then I was able to push it the rest of the way out. So if you're struggling to get those bushings out, give that a try. If you don't have a press, make one with a vise here, or try the drilling method. Get this rest of the way out and clean this bar up. Start on everything else. All right, so the radius arms are in. New C bushings and the radius arm bushings, frame mount bracket. This was definitely a two-person job. I don't know how I could have done it by myself. We ended up using a ratchet strap around the axle back to the transfer case skid plate to help pull it in. And it was just kind of muscling after there. We had to take it on and off a few times to try to get these radius arms level together on the floor. But we got it pretty good now. I think it's as good as it's gonna get. So next it's gonna be putting the springs back in. I'm gonna start at the bottom. I already installed the cups. I'm gonna rotate the springs in, and then the top bolts will go in. After that, we're gonna put the shocks in, dry shaft, tires, put it down on the floor before we do the track bar. Stay tuned. All right, so I went ahead and finished that up. Little word of caution when you're doing the springs, keep that bottom cup loose. Take that top clip out. You can rotate the spring right into that bottom retainer, then jack up the axle to press the spring up in, and then you gotta get the two bolts in the top of the spring. There's one that comes down, and then this one that goes into the side there. Put the pitman arm back on, put the tires back on, lower it back onto the wheels, and then finished up with the track bar. Last thing I gotta do is the steering stabilizer, which goes right there. But I just went and ordered a new one from James Duff because the one that was on there was shot. All in all, not a bad install. About a day and a half. You could probably do it in one day, but it's gonna be a long day. All right guys, so that's gonna wrap it up for today. I hope you learned something, hope you enjoyed the video. If you please like and subscribe, I'd appreciate it. See you next time.